Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys making some time out of your day to hang out with me a little bit. I know we're all crunched for time these days and lots of YouTube channels to watch, so really appreciate you guys tuning in to Intuitive Angling. And guys, by popular demand, it's back to story time. I've had a ton of people requesting that I share a bunch of the old stories from back in the day with y'all. And I've got one that I want to share with you guys. I did this early on in my channel, but we've gotten like 100,000 more subscribers since I did this video, so probably most of you guys have not heard this. I want to tell you guys a story about when I had the state record largemouth bass on at Table Rock Lake and lost it right at the boat. It's a nightmare story. I think you guys are going to get a kick out of this, so we're going to do that in today's video. Also, guys, just a quick reminder, I want to clue you in real quick before we get started here on the bait that's really been working good from a lot of people telling me, they've been sending me messages telling me they're catching a lot of fish on that. And everybody, guys, I've probably gotten a dozen messages about people telling me they've been catching them here lately on this megabass sleeper craw around the boat docks. I hear a lot of people skipping this thing and just putting this thing on a flipping stick and flipping it around docks. And I'll put my tackle warehouse link in the description, the megabass sleeper craw if you'd like to get one. I've done really good on it, flipping it around lay down trees and stuff. So really natural looking crawdad lure. Look at that thing there. It's really good bait. It's got a kill weight in it so you can flip it. It weighs about ½ ounce or so. So tackle warehouse link in the description. Okay guys, back to the story here. this is quite a deal here. This was in March. It was like the middle of March in 1982. And I was down at Table Rock Lake, and you got to remember, this is when Table Rock Lake was just an unbelievable fishery. It's before it got overfished like it is now, before it got annihilated by tournaments, and before it started getting polluted from all the overdevelopment, from the $2 million homes ripping off the hillsides and putting all the crap into the lake. This was back when Table Rock Lake was awesome, back in the late 70s and early 80s. And during this time frame down there, guys, this is one of the most incredible things, because there was probably about a 10-year window from about 1975 to 1985 where you could, if you went to Table Rock in February, March, and early April, and if you did not catch a 7 or 8 or 9 pounder, it was an exception to the rule. There was they used to have these contests at all the marinas down there where people they'd bring their heaviest fish in that they caught during the week, and they'd have a little contest, and somebody would win like 50 bucks at the end of the contest. And they had everybody posted with a picture of their fish. And there was like 7, 8, 9s, 9.5, 8.5 constant. And now down at Table Rock, 5 pounds will win back big bass. It's like it sucks now compared to what it was. But anyway, this was right during the heyday, March 1982. I was down there with a friend of mine that I went to high school with. And we were down there fishing spoonbill rebels. Let's see if I got my rebel box here. I got to show you this, guys. I'll show you the exact bait I caught it on here, or that I had the state record hooked on here. But anyway, back, let me preface this a little bit. Back in the 70s, in the late 70s and early 80s, these spoonbill rebels that's all we used down there. This was like the predecessor of the modern jerkbait. And here's the exact one that I hooked that giant fish on. I'll tell you about it. It was a gold with a black back spoonbill rebel here. I had it weighted, back then, these things float, but I had it weighted with solder back then to let it suspend. And what the deal was, back at Table Rock back then, there used to be a lot of standing timber in the lake, and there was a lot of submerged cedar trees, these big giant cedar trees that were dead, but some of them were sticking out of the water, some of them were underwater, some of them were at the water level. Just depended upon the lake level. But in this particular situation, the lake level was normal, and there was a lot of different cedar trees mixed. I'm talking some of these cedar trees were huge. Some of them were like 15 feet in diameter. And the technique that the old timers figured out down there, and I learned about this technique when I was in the Big Mo Bass Club back in the 70s, they'd take that spoonbill rebel and they'd reel it down next to those cedar trees and just let it sit there forever, like for a minute or so. And those big ones would come out of those cedar trees and get them. So I'd been doing this for 2 or 3 years. I got really good at it. So I was down there with my buddy, and it was perfect scenario. It was about an average temperature March day. I think the air temperature was probably in the low 50s. It was a cloudy day, I remember. There was just a tiny breeze. It was almost calm, but there was just a tiny breeze, heavy overcast. Water temperatures, I think the water temperatures, if I can remember back then, it was probably right around 50 degrees, something like that. And we pulled up on this one of our favorite stretches on the lake, and it was a main lake bluff that came, there was a cove that was right inside of this main lake bluff. So in other words, you had a main lake bluff that turned into a small cove, and this cove probably went back in there about 100 yards. And it was a steep main lake bluff, and it had a steep point on it, and there was these big cedar trees scattered all over the point and back into this cove. So we started that morning, we went to the back of the cove and started working our way out to the main lake there. So right off the bat, I caught one about 6 pounds on it, which was a good one. And then my buddy, probably, I don't know, 50 yards up in front of us, he catches an 8-13. We weighed it. It's almost a 9-pounder. And then we're getting to the point there, close to the point. So he just caught that 8-13. And probably 5 casts later, I made a long cast with that spoonbill rebel in between 2 big cedar trees. Well, these cedar trees were probably in, I don't know, 15, 18 foot of water, something like that. I reeled that spoonbill rebel down there and just let it stop just like that. And I twitched it a couple times like that and let it stop. And all of a sudden, I just saw my line, boop, just like that. My line just jumped like that, which the fish had it. I set the hook, and I thought I was hung up. It's like, shoot, I thought I hung it into a limb or something like that. And all of a sudden, that limb started moving. And I'm reeling this fish to the boat, and it feels so, and I don't know, at this point, I said, well, maybe I've got it foul hooked or something. This thing, it feels like I'm reeling in a dang 16-pound bowling ball. So, I'm reeling this thing in, and the water back then, before Table Rock got all polluted from all the development down there, the water used to be gin clear at Table Rock. So the water visibility was probably at least 10 or 12 foot in clarity. It was super clear. So I'm reeling this fish to the boat, and it's not really fighting hard, it's just super heavy. And I get the thing probably 10 foot from the boat, and it's calm out, so I can see down there. And I look down there and I go, there's no way that's a bass. It was just freaking huge. And I'm reeling it farther. All of a sudden, guys, I see the side of this fish and the mouth of it. This fish I go, oh my God, look at the size of that fish. Now remember, my buddy just caught a 9-pounder. This fish, it looked like it was twice that big. It was freaking giant. It had a side on it like that. Big old giant mouth over there. And it's like, oh my God, this thing is a giant. And I'm just like, just like my heart's beating 100 miles an hour, and I'm reeling it slow like that. And all of a sudden we get it, my buddy's standing there with the net. We get it about 5 foot from the boat, and I can see it perfectly in the water. Big old freaking giant mouth. You could get both fists in there like that if I had it out of the water. All of a sudden it opens its mouth and the spoonbill rebel comes out. And when the rebel came out, what had happened on the thing is, and this was a real problem with them. I don't have it here because I got shorter hooks, but back then, the hooks that came on the rebel were these stock silver beak hooks, and they had a long shank. The back 2 treble hooks on the thing were crossed. They were hooked on each other. So what had happened is that fish came up and hit that rebel, and the hooks were crossed and like that when the fish hit it. So he had it in her mouth, and when she opened her mouth, the bait just came out because she wasn't even hooked. The hooks were fouled together like that. So anyway, guys, I'm guessing, we both guessed the fish at least 14 pounds. It could have been 15 pounds. I think the lake record, I'll look on there, I think it's 12, 14 or 13, something like this. Definitely bigger than that. And like I said, we just put a 9-pounder in the boat, so we had a frame of reference based upon how big the 9 looked in the water, because we saw the 9-pounder perfectly versus, this freaking behemoth dinosaur down there. So I'm guessing 14, 15 pounds at least, just an absolute giant. I've never hooked one in my entire life anywhere across the country bigger than that. That's the biggest fish I have ever seen, ever hooked, and of course lost the thing. So anyway, I'm convinced it was a state record. I mean, so my buddy was too. So just wanted to pass that story along with you guys. I know you guys probably have some big bass heartache stories, so shoot me some comments, let me know some big ones you guys lost or something. So talk later.